Now, I don't know if there's a lot else that I see in the real estate business that is much more prominent than simply just the misunderstanding and sort of misrepresentation of what it's actually like to be a real estate agent. I know that a lot of people are considering getting into working in real estate, and a lot of people sort of have this false fantasy that they believe what working in the real estate industry is actually like based on what they see on TV and, friends and people who that they see on social media that work in the real estate industry, and sort of how they try to make it seem like it actually is. But I am here to tell you, as a 12 and a half year full-time real estate agent, I'm here to talk about a lot of the misconceptions and help you understand what it's really like to work in the real estate industry. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, I love working in real estate. I've been working in real estate for a long, long time, and there's a reason for that. However, this job is not the glamour job that a lot of people think that it is. A lot of people think that what we do is we open doors, and we tour beautiful houses and all of that. That's just not what the job is actually like. So I'm going to pound through a whole bunch of stuff. As always, I wrote an article and published it on my website, kevincramptonrealtor.com. You can go and you can read the article if you prefer reading and you want to get an extremely deep dive into this topic. So a big myth is that everybody thinks that all real estate agents make $80,000 to $120,000 or whatever they think that real estate agents make, which is a complete myth. Well, what you're seeing is statistics that are coming from people who are deep in their career that happen to fill out a questionnaire, but the number is actually objectively way lower than that, especially for first couple of years of somebody's career. Here's what the actual numbers look like. If you go on the National Association of Realtors website, you're going to see that the median gross income for a real estate professional is right around $58,000. Now, it's important to understand that that is the median gross. Median meaning that half of all real estate agents make less than $58,000 and half of all real estate agents make more than $58,000. Gross meaning that this is before any cost of operations. Most people don't realize when they get into selling real estate or when they're thinking about a real estate professional is that real estate professionals are 100% self-employed people. So we don't necessarily get a paycheck. We are a business. So the gross income is what is earned prior to any cost of operations. Now, the median net income, according to NAR, is about $36,000. Half of real estate agents make less than this, half of real estate agents make more than this, but $36,000 is the median average for what a real estate agent makes take-home pay. But even that is a little bit skewed because the average real estate agent in the first 2 years of their career, so less than 2 years of experience in their career, make less than $10,000. So it's a weird dynamic of how the actual real estate industry works because it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not sort of an equal playing field. In the first couple of years of your career, you can expect to make less than $10,000 a year. This median average of $36,000 as a net to real estate agents is joining all real estate agents, people who have been doing it for 40 years, people who have been doing it for 20 years, people who have been doing it for 1 month. That's the median average of that. So it's important to understand that in the first few years of your career, you should not expect to earn $36,000 unless you are well above the average in terms of your performance. And as a matter of fact, according to the data, 62% of all real estate agents that belong to the National Association of Realtors make less than $10,000 a year. That is a crazy number. 62% of all real estate agents don't make $1,000 a month on average. And furthermore, that is before all of the real estate agents' cost of operations, which are fees and things that they have to pay whether they make any money or not. So that's another important thing to consider if you're potentially considering getting into real estate. So that brings us into some of the cost of operations that most real estate agents face. Now, these come from the actual National Association of Realtors statistics, so they're going to vary a little bit from one area to another, but this can give you a pretty decent idea of what to expect. All real estate agents have to subscribe to a multiple listing service, usually to the tune of a couple $100s per year. We have to pay association dues to not just one association, but just like any other governing body, there's a national governance, there's a state governance, there's a local government. So in Michigan, where I live and do business, I have to pay dues to the National Association of Realtors, called NAR. I have to pay dues to the Michigan Association of Realtors, called MAR. And I actually subscribe to 3 different local boards of realtors. So every real estate agent is going to have to pay dues to these associations to stay in a real estate agent. Not all real estate agents carry E&O insurance or errors and omissions insurance, but a lot do. Generally, the broker is going to be the person who will handle errors and omissions, but just another thing to consider, because a lot of real estate agents do pay this out as a cost of operations. Things like CRM software, client relationship management software, other kind of softwares, things just like any other business, you have to, have systems to be able to run your business and to control your prospecting. So these are not free. Generally speaking, you're going to have to pay for a subscription. This is where you can keep all your contacts and your deal management, all of that kind of stuff. Of course, you have to pay for that. Then all the marketing and photography and signage and cards and all of the different things that you're going to need if you're actually even doing any business. These type of things can add up a lot faster than you think. But at least if when you're talking about paying these types of costs out of pocket, generally it means you're probably doing business. So that's sort of part of the equation as well. And then just wear and tear on your vehicle. The amount of miles and traveling that real estate agents do is crazy. And we travel all the time. And so we're spending tons of money on gas, lots of wear and tear on our vehicles. So another cost that most people have to incur. Now, all of this adds up on average, according to the National Association of Realtors, to about $8,100 per year on average. So now if you go back to the statistic that 62% of all agents don't earn more than $10,000 per year, that's before expenses. Those expenses are $8,100 on average. So that means that, by that math, it sounds like 62% of all real estate agents that everybody thinks makes all this money and that are just crooked and out stealing everybody's equity, they're actually making literally almost nothing for the average real estate agent. So for home buyers and home sellers, what is your agent actually making when they represent you when you're selling your home or when you're buying a home? Well, here's a pretty simple breakdown for you. So this is on a $300,000 deal. So let's say because the average sales commission across the entire country is a little over 5%. So let's just make it simple at 5%. So let's say that we have a $300,000 transaction. That $300,000 transaction is going to charge a 5% sales commission that's going to be charged by the listing agent. Now, the listing agent doesn't just get 5% of the sale of your home. A lot of sellers will think that that's the case, but it's not. So the way that it works is that on a $300,000 deal, the seller is going to pay out of the proceeds of the sale 5% sales commission, $15,000 in this scenario. Okay, now of that $15,000, the listing agent doesn't just get to keep the $15,000. Well, they're going to have to compensate the agent that brings the buyer. So it's called a buyer-agent cooperation. So they're going to generally split that straight down the middle. So now the listing agent is left with $7,500. Now, of that $7,500 that's left, now they're going to have to split that with their broker. So the listing agent is going to always have a commission split with their broker. It can be 50-50, it can be 70-30, but the average is 60-40, where the listing agent is then going to give 40% of what's left, the $7,500, to their managing broker. And then finally, we have all of the costs to put the house on the market: photography, marketing, ads, all of the different things that go into actually publishing a professional listing. So, it's not as easy as showing up to the house and taking some photos with a cell phone and publishing them to the internet. We have to pay photographers and marketing and all of this kind of stuff. So I always tell my clients that it takes about $500 to $600 for me to put their house on the market with a professional listing. So again, this comes out of my pocket, out of my portion of the sales commission. So now we get to the final number. And on a $300,000 sale where I act as the listing agent and I represent one side of the transaction, you think that you're paying me $15,000, but what I'm actually earning is about $3,000, which might seem like a lot. But another thing to take into consideration is that if we're just talking about just this deal from the day that we receive an offer to the day that we close, that doesn't sound like a bad deal, but you have to remember that this entire process generally takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months to occur. So I have 3 to 6 months worth of work, phone calls, all of the different things that go into, actually procuring a sale for real estate. $3,000 starts to seem like a lot less than what you actually expect it to be. Now, when you work in real estate, the hours are flexible, and it is great in a lot of cases. I don't ever miss, baseball games and orchestra concerts and all of that kind of stuff. But what really stinks is the fact that the hours are flexible. I can do my clerical work. I can do all of that kind of stuff whenever I want. I don't have to punch a clock, but I have to be available, and I cannot control when my clients are available. If they need to see houses on nights and weekends, then that's when I have to make myself available. Otherwise, I'm just not going to be able to represent enough clients to make a living. So, you sort of end up becoming a slave to your phone and to other people's schedules when you get into real estate. So I thought it would be a lot more flexible than it is, and it is flexible, and it does have some benefits, but you got to keep in mind that as soon as you start your career in real estate, you punch in and you never, ever get to punch out. When I got into real estate, I thought I would be touring all sorts of beautiful homes every day and just, showing houses to clients and doing that kind of stuff. And after spending over a decade in real estate, I realized that that's about 5% of the job. What I spend most of my days doing is phone calls and prospecting and making content like this and answering emails and negotiating offers and structuring offers and all of that kind of stuff. Showing houses is a very, very small part of the job. But coming into it, again, it's just another huge misconception of what it's actually like to work in real estate. Now, when we talked about that mocked up deal, that $300,000 deal where that agent earned $2,900, that is only if the deal closes. And on average, about 15% of all deals don't close. And so depending on where you are in that deal's life cycle, you might have months of work that was unpaid for. At the end of the day, if it takes 100 tasks to close a real estate transaction and you do 99 of them, you get exactly 0. The deal has to go all the way to closing or you never make any money. A big misconception is that, getting into real estate is like any other job. It's you don't get hired and then you just go to work and you're a real estate agent. It is starting a business. And just like starting a business, there is a high attrition rate. There's a very high failure rate. In the National Association of Realtors, although it's sort of like one of those statistics that's common knowledge, but it's so hard to, actually quantify. But they say that 9 out of 10 real estate agents do not renew their license after just a couple of years. So coming into the real estate business, you're not guaranteed success. As a matter of fact, you're almost guaranteed to fail. The ones that succeed are the ones who can survive that couple of years to be able to get some reps and be able to start to build a sphere network that is actually going to produce referrals and repeat clients. generally, if you can get to that point of your career, you're probably going to make it. But the hard part is that first couple of years when, again, you're making less than $10,000 a year, and in some cases less than $2,000 a year, it's just very hard for the average person to survive. Now, another misconception about working in the real estate industry is that a couple of years ago, there was a class action lawsuit in which changed the way that we disclose how buyer agents are compensated and how sellers are able to advertise this, all of this kind of stuff. It was just a bunch of lobbyists that went out and got rich at somebody else's expense. And so the common narrative in the press and sort of on TV was that, buyer agency compensation and all of that, it was all out the window. This is going to change everything fundamentally. But what ended up actually happening in 2 years in practice is sales commission actually went up, which is crazy. I personally would have never thought that would have happened. I thought that there was going to be a lot more flat rate real estate brokers offering that type of service. But actually, on average, the average sales commission and average buyer agency commission paid out to a buyer agent actually went up slightly. And it's still almost every single seller will agree to split the sales commission the same way that it always has been. Otherwise, they're diminishing their buyer pool by so much that they're putting themselves at a huge disadvantage, and they're not competitive in the market if they're not willing to offer that. Another thing that we get is we get a horrible rap that we are, unethical. And don't get me wrong, I do know some agents that are sort of snakes, but by and large, it's a weird statistic because only 17%, so 80%, say that they do not trust the ethics of a real estate agent. However, 88% of all buyers who purchase a house still use a real estate agent. So 8 out of 10 people say that they can't trust us, but 9 out of 10 people use us when they're purchasing their house. So I think people more get this sentiment from, a very small representation of bad experiences by real estate consumers. And so they get this negative opinion of real estate agents. But I say I've been working around real estate agents for well over 10 years, and almost all of them are terrific people, do a really good job, work very hard for their clients. But there are a few that, I don't particularly care for, and I don't think that they do a good job for their clients. And so those are the ones that give us all a bad name and sort of, give us a really bad reputation, even though most people who know a real estate agent gladly work with them and generally will recommend them to their friends and family. So all of this is just to say that there's a huge difference between perception and sort of what is portrayed on TV and what it's actually like to be a real estate agent. So if you're somebody who is considering getting into working in real estate, or you're a seller or a buyer who, thinks these misconceptions are true or believe these, it's worth doing a little bit of research. And again, I'll post my article where it goes a lot deeper into this topic, but it's not quite what you think it is. So if you're going to get into real estate, the first thing that I would advise that you do is, give yourself a budget for 6 to 12 months of cost of operations, assuming that you're not going to make any money at all. Don't go into it thinking that it's a job and that you're going to get a paycheck regularly, because you're not going to. You need to treat it like a business, like any other business, where you have to actually build from the ground up and focus most of your energy on prospecting and procuring new business if you're going to have a chance to make it. Because in order to make it, you are going to need to be one of the few that are able to survive long enough for your sphere network and your pipeline to start paying out. At the end of the day, working in real estate is rewarding, don't get me wrong, but it's not some glamour job that everybody thinks that it is. And generally speaking, the people who make it and are high earners in this business are more than worth it and more than well deserve it. The main thing is understanding, knowing before you start the process, whether you're buying a house, selling a house, or want to be a real estate agent. So if you like this content, please give it a like and a share. And as always, thanks for watching the video.